Hello everyone, we're returning to Gelvin Valley here on Farm Sim 15, continuing harvest in field number 38, our wheat harvest. Very thankful the last couple episodes we mangled our equipment, getting it stuck in that fence over there. Had a dickens of a time getting it free, but we're back harvesting again, so it's all good. Oh, don't touch the fence, you silly guy. Let me help the guy out. He's trying to find the entrance or something. I don't know. There. Now, do you know what to do? Yeah, maybe he does. I think he's going to look for... There we go. Off he goes. Kind of in the last video, kind of following up on getting stuck in the fence and what have you, I was talking about things that can happen in the field that make your day longer, that are a distraction from harvest, issues that get caused that slow things down, and it's any number of things. And some of them can be pretty bad, others not so bad. But it reminded me of something that happened to me when I was working on the farm, those Lone Oak Farms. You know, in the morning, I think I mentioned we service the combines. We would fuel them up. We would take the grease gun to them. We would do all these things, and I think I mentioned in the last video or the video before a combine fire that we almost had in my grandfather's combine. And one thing I forgot to mention about that is we learned that we really needed to blow the engine compartment out each day. And we hadn't been doing that. We only did it on a periodic basis, and we just had no idea how much chaff and straw were accumulating in the engine compartment. And it's the buildup of all that in there that eventually got too close to something, you know, that may have been turning. I don't know, there's a bearing or something, and straw got pulled in and overheat. I forget how it started. So one of the things we did in our morning servicing ritual, if you will, is we made sure that we opened the engine compartment and we thoroughly blew it out so that that never happened again. And there was also filters, air filters and whatnot to blow out in the morning. I think we did that also. And we didn't do this every time, but on occasion we cleaned out what was called a rock box. And I don't know if every combine has this. The John Deere ones that we had did. Probably the other manufacturers have something similar, but under the feeder housing, just before the material within the feeder housing would enter the cylinder where threshing would happen, or basically the bowels of the combine, just before that there was this little indentation called a rock box, and basically it was just a low area. You know, the material would pass by over the top of the box, and only if there was something heavy would it end up in the rock box. It would kind of, you know, come through with the material, and then if it was heavy, it would fall into the rock box so that it didn't go through the cylinder. I mean, you can imagine you pick up a rock, and if you have all this fast-moving equipment in there, you know, the cylinder might be turning several hundred RPMs, you know, which is moving right along. All this metal, and you put a rock in there, you can imagine what kind of damage that would do to the machinery. It could cause a fire, you know, with sparks flying. So you did not want a rock going through the cylinder. So it was helpful to have this in the off chance a rock was picked up, and it was never picked up deliberately. You just didn't do that. But you'd be surprised how many rocks almost ended up going into the combine, and it somehow was picked up in the windrow or what have you. There's rocks all over this field. You know, so when I say rocks, I'm talking rocks maybe these, it's under the size of your head, but sometimes bigger than the size of your fist. So somehow they would make it up the feeder housing, they would drop into this rock box, and occasionally in the mornings as we service the combines, we would go down underneath the feeder housing, we'd open a hatch, and we would clean out whatever was in the rock box. It also would occasionally pick up some big sticks. there too, and any other type of paraphernalia that happened to be sitting in the windrow that was heavy enough to drop in there. Well, so one morning, my uncles tasked me with doing this. One of them told me, go down and clean out the rock boxes. And at the time, we had 3 machines. So I go under one, I go under the second, I clean those out, I get all the pieces out, and then I go under the third. I think it was the 8820, though that doesn't necessarily matter. And I crawl under there, and up above, I hear the engine start up. So somebody has got in the combine and they started the engine. And I think, well, okay, this shouldn't be any problem. My uncle knows that I'm down here, right? So I continued crawling under there. And you know, to get under there, you climb in front of the big tire of the combine, the front tire. You know, and you can see them on our little mod here. They're not insubstantial, and if they ran over you, they'd crush you. But anyway, you crawl in front of that to get underneath the feeder housing, and so I get underneath there all the way, and I open the hatch, and I start reaching my hands in there to clean out the rock box. There was stuff in there just like there was in the other machines. Well, then I hear the machine grind just as I'm getting done pulling the stuff out, and whoever had turned it on put it into gear. And it was still an idle. Of course, you wouldn't engage the separator if you weren't an idle. But they started the thing up. And there I am with my hands, and I could see the cylinder in there turning and everything. Like I say, it's really close. Oh, there's my combine. It's having a struggle. No, don't go through the fence, you dimwit. Oh, please come out. Oh, no, no, no. Oh, dear. What is going on here? No, no, no. Can I... Ah. Dog my cats. No! Oh, I did it again. Oh, for corn sakes. Wow. What an incompetent farmer I am. Look at that. Laying it just on top of there, just out of reach. But I can about guarantee you, when I go to hook this thing up again, it's going to do the same thing to me that happened before. Ah, look at that. Look at that. See, it could miss the post. That is just maddening. Just maddening. Well, I tell you what, I think this is a sign that I need to quit recording and quit for the night. I need to do the same thing all over again. Oh my. I am so sorry. I'm just having a time of it tonight because I wasn't paying attention and telling a silly story. I'm going to have to remember this for this field. That is just, well, it's asinine. So I'm going to have to remember this in particular in this field that, okay, I think he wants to offload me. I better not take him on a goose chase. Alright, I think he wants to turn around. You know what? I'm going to do this manually. No, I don't have to. Hallelujah. Alright, so he'll come up. He'll offload me. Oh, what a good fella. Let me back up. Because I have to head up the hill again to go give my header. You know, and wow, why is it that everything goes wrong all at the same time? He tries to go out the door. At least he didn't get stuck in a ditch. I think what I'm going to do this time, the time I get back here, this time we are calling it a night. Definitely for sure. So I'm going to park him. I'll get back in my combine. We'll do what we got to do and go up and get it. And see, my cash is even less. I wasn't paying attention. I'd kind of be curious to know what they charge me to do it. I know they charge me something. 2 times in one night. I tell you what, this is... See, this is how nervous I get when I have to do a YouTube video. And I'm an introvert and it's hard for me to talk. I just get all flustered and I can't pay attention to my farming equipment. Well, so this will keep me humble. Got to take a trip, and I think what it's trying to tell me is it's too late to be combining. You know what? That's probably what happened. I bet the operator just couldn't see the fence, made a mistake, and it's just too dark out. Right? That's got to be something, right? But anyway, my story, I guess I can continue that while I'm taking this thing across the hill to go get the header. So someone turned on the combine, engaged the separator and the cylinder and all the machinery inside while my hand was up there in it. And you know, at the time, I probably should have immediately got out from underneath that thing, but I didn't. Something told me, well, my uncles know I'm under here, right? And okay, so they turned on the machine. They maybe did it on purpose, knowing that I would hear it start, that I would keep my hands out of the way. You know, when you clean out the rock box, your hands are literally right there by the cylinder, and within a few inches, if you put it in there, well, you could have your hands all chowdered up. That's how close it is to the moving parts. So I was basically done down there anyway, so I took a little extra time. I closed the hatch, latched it up tight, all those things, and then I crawled back out from underneath the machine. Probably in front of the combine tire, which was a stupid thing to do. But that's where you kind of had space to do it. Well, so I crawl out from under there, and my uncles were shocked. They had no idea I was under there. They'd either forgotten that they had sent me under there, or had thought I was already done, whatever it was. Maybe I took too long, I don't know. But they were just shocked that I was under there, and it was just a sheer stroke of luck that, you know, they were revving up for the harvest. It's a sheer stroke of luck that they delayed just a few moments while they engaged a separator. You know, ordinarily, you know, the engine was on for a while, it was in idle, so they let the machine warm up. Well, once you engage the separator, you didn't have to wait very long before putting the throttle full forward and engaging everything on the machine, and you took off and you started harvesting. But for whatever reason that morning, they didn't. I was under there, and he waited just a little bit longer. Again, totally unbeknownst to him, but fortunate for me. Because, you know, if he would have started moving, well, I'd have had a tough decision to make, which is, where do I go? You know, I think a person can fit under a combine, you know, if you crawl, but then there's those back tires coming, and how do you know if he isn't going to turn real sudden? I had a little cousin die in the Midwest when she was a little girl. She went out to the harvest field with somebody in the truck, and I forget how old she was. I don't think she was even 6 years old, 4 or 5, somewhere in there. Maybe younger, I don't recall. Well, they took her out there, but someone apparently didn't watch her closely enough. She got out of the truck. She crawled over to these big, noisy combines coming through. The operator had no clue there was a kid out there, didn't see her, and she got hit just barely by the rear tire of the combine. I think it hit her. It went over her neck, or not over the entire neck. I don't think it broke any of her bones, but it pinched her jugular vein and killed her. And I mean, that's just the heartache that can happen. So if you're under there cleaning out the rock box and they start moving, or if you're under there for any reason, you know, those back tires, they can kill you, and you don't know necessarily if he's going to turn sharp right away or just what he's going to do. So it would have, if he would have started moving, that would have been a very uncomfortable place to be in. You could say, well, at least you weren't going to get nailed by the front tires, but, you know, I wouldn't want to get hit by the back tires either. Maybe you could crawl quick enough to get out of there, but it would take some quick thinking, and it would take even a little bit more luck. I'm just thankful nothing happened. I think it scared the daylights out of my uncles, and if I recall correctly, I think I got chewed out royally. Um, I'm not sure why. I think they were just scared, that something could have happened to me and I got hurt. And like I say, I'm sure I had some responsibility in that too. And maybe when I first heard the machine start up, what I should have done was immediately got out from underneath and made sure that the operator knew, that somebody was underneath it. So there's, you know what? I am such an idiot. I went up the wrong road. Well, wait a minute. It's probably longer to go around. I can still get into town. You know what? I'll keep going. This is the wrong way, but I'll get there eventually. This is a road work video, not a farming video. Anybody that's been around farm equipment probably knows of close calls, has had their own close calls, or people close to them have. But the reality is, I mean, I think I described in a previous video, I had another uncle who was a hog farmer who I was cringing as he was standing over the PTO shaft as he was unloading corn from a semi while wearing coveralls. He was straddling this moving PTO shaft with coveralls that had strings hanging down from them. And all I could see was those strings getting caught in the PTO shaft and just wrapping him up in it. Fortunately, that never happened either. But all sorts of ways for harm to come to a person on the farm. And it's just unfortunate, but some of those things happen in horrific ways. I think I heard, it's been a number of years ago, this was someone in one of our churches kind of in the middle of the country, in the Midwest, where corn country is. And I think this was a hog farmer, and he had a tractor and a tank on it, I think to haul slurry or something. I'm not sure what exactly he was doing, but he backed a full tank of it into a lagoon by mistake. And the weight was so heavy and he wasn't able to stop it in time that it pulled the whole tractor with him in it into the lagoon. And the lagoon was pretty deep, and immediately the tractor just disappeared. And it had a cab on it, and I kind of think this was an elderly man. He just wasn't able to get out in time. And can you imagine having that happen to you, going over backwards into a manure lagoon, seeing all that come into the tractor cab, and drowning, basically drowning in hog urine? And it could be, and I hope this is what happened, that, it's no small thing to subject yourself to and it isn't just the smell of urine, animal urine or manure. I think is it carbon monoxide? Maybe it's carbon dioxide that it puts out. Not 100% sure. Yep, there's our header again. But what I hope happened for the guy is that he was overwhelmed and died by breathing or inhaling the carbon dioxide or whatever it is. I'm not sure I'm saying that right. Maybe it is monoxide. But I hope that's what took him, so that he didn't have to literally drown in the slurry. That'd be a horrible way to go. There's no end of accidents that can happen on the farm. It's, if you're lucky, it's only a fender bender, but if you're not paying attention or disrespect the machine you're working with, it can literally take your life, or maybe even worse, it can bung you up so bad that you're not able to walk, not able to function the way you did previously. It's one of my brothers. I'm the oldest in my family. One of my brothers came to the farm to help at one time, and he had a run-in with an auger. There's all kinds of stories about augers. This particular auger was sitting out. It was used to unload a truck. You'd back a farm truck up to it. You'd lift the hoist, and there's a little gate in the back where you could let the seed or wheat come out, and you would empty it into this auger, and the auger would take it kind of up into the barn or into a storage area. Well, the auger didn't have a shield on top of it, and so I think it came with a shield, but a lot of times those shields were taken off just to help the material flow more smoothly. Well, with no shield and no other thing, I mean, this auger was sitting kind of over a tarp on the gravel, and the tarp would be there to help clean it up so it didn't mix too much with the gravel. So you'd dump the grain on there, and then when you were done, you would clean the mess up. And what we would do, again, this probably wasn't the best thing to do, is you would lift the tarp on the side. Several people would do this, and you would kind of shake whatever grain or grass seed was in there towards the auger so it could, clean it up. And then you'd scoop the rest up kind of by hand. So I think I wasn't there when this happened, but I gathered my brother lifted the edge of the tarp and was trying to shake it. And what happened is the auger grabbed the tarp and immediately just pulled him in. Why he didn't let go of the tarp, I don't know. In retrospect, that's what he should have done, but he didn't. Probably what he wanted, he was probably scared and saying, oh my goodness, this tarp's going in there, I got to make sure I pull it out. Well, nobody is stronger than a PTO shaft running an auger. And so we should have dropped it, but like I say, we were doing all this when we were kids, so he just wasn't thinking. So it pulls him in, and I think someone saw it happen, and they immediately went to the tractor to turn the PTO off. And fortunately that happened right as my brother's hands were pulled into the auger. I kind of think he still broke a bone in his hand or broke the skin. It required stitches, I believe, as I recall, but it could have been so much worse. It could have, crippled him for life. Unfortunately, it didn't. This particular brother now is a computer engineer, so he needs his hands. We all need our hands. Nobody wants to do without their hands, but he probably would have had to make a totally different career choice, if this would have, taken his hands. And sometimes it does. It will literally take a limb. That reminds me of another story, again, that happened in it's someone I met from one of our Midwestern churches. Um, Again, I think it was, well, I guess I don't know. I don't know if it was a hog farm. I think it happened in Iowa. Um, He was in the 8th grade, this gentleman. And he told me at the time he was in the prime of his life. It was football season at his school. He was on the team. He was a good player. They had won a bunch of games. He was looking forward to going into some championship games or playoffs or whatever at his grade level. But he also had work to do on the home family farm, and one of which was, and maybe this was a hog farm. I forget why he was inside the grain bin, but I think if you do a little googling, you can see what kind of grain bins in the Midwest, in particular, where grain is stored. It's typically these steel structures. They're circular and cone-shaped, kind of. Well, not cone-shaped, they're kind of cylinder-shaped, and then at the top they come to a point. So there's some grain elevator system that hauls all the grain in, dumps it in there. But then, of course, you need to get the grain back out. So, first of all, you can just, there's an auger built into the floor. I think it goes underneath the floor in the center of the bin. There's a hole, and so the grain will go in there, and then there's an auger that takes it outside of the bin, so you can get it in other equipment, in a truck or whatever. But as the level of grain falls, eventually you have to go in there and scoop by hand and put in another auger, a floor auger, that will go in a circle. It's kind of like a pivot, will pivot around that hole in the middle, and it's another separate little auger, a sweep auger, I think they call it, that hauls the rest of the grain in the bin towards that little hole and gets it out of there. So it was at that point in the grain bin, this young man went in there, and sometimes the uh, the sweep auger will catch on things, or it'll stop unexpectedly, and so you need to go in there and address the problem. Otherwise, you won't be able to take the grain out. So this young man, eighth grader, goes in there. Apparently something stopped. He's trying to get grain out, and I believe what he told me, because I heard about this years later, is that he picked up the these sweep augers. They have a little shroud on them. One side is open auger, that goes against the pile. The other side of it is kind of a metal shroud, and there's this bar on it that runs the whole length of the auger, where you can kind of pick the thing up and you can move it. And it's, if that's all you touch, I don't know if it's entirely safe, but you could put your hands on it even while the auger is running. Probably not the best idea, but if it's just to quickly move it out of the way or whatever, you can do that. And so he lifted it, I think, to try to shoosh it over onto the pile where it could continue uh, doing doing its job. Well, this may have happened a time or two, I don't know, but he said in one of those times, he was wearing a coat. I think there was some bolts on the end of the augers it was turning, or something there turning, that grabbed at his coat. You know what? I'm just going to harvest a little bit here while I'm talking. And oops. Oh, what did I do that? Silly guy. I'll get him going here. There was some bolt heads turning that grabbed at his coat, and of course what you don't want to have happen is an auger or anything turning to grab your clothing. I mean, that's just bad news, because if it grabs your clothing, it can pull you into it and of course shatter your arm. And so even as a kid, he knew all this. So I think he tried to throw the whole thing away from him, and I don't know if he slipped or what happened. It let go of his coat, but what happened is it fell, and he fell underneath the auger, and it was his left leg the auger came across, and it was between his hip and his knee, and there was no stopping it. This poor guy sat there in agony, unable to move this auger, as it just sat there and chowdered away at his leg. I mean, it broke the bone, it tore into his flesh, there was blood everywhere. It's a wonder it didn't kill him, because, there's, I think the femoral artery is a pretty major artery that comes down your leg. It's a wonder it never, it's just a wonder it didn't kill him, period. And all that time, he told me, and this is years later, where he totally lost his leg. All he had at that point was a stump, and he had a false leg that he could put it into. And if you if you just observed him moving around, you'd think maybe he had a limp. You really wouldn't know that he was missing his entire leg unless you knew some details. But he did. He totally lost his leg. But what he told me is, at the time, even amid all the pain of this auger grinding away on his leg, and it took a while for someone to find him to turn all the machinery off. He couldn't turn it off from inside there. That had to be done outside. But through his mind was running, it's like this: I'm never going to play football again. I'm never going to be able to do these things, and that his life was being permanently changed. And I gotta say, knowing this man, he's a wonderful man. Um, he didn't let this change what kind of a person or a man he could become. He's He's married now, has a family, and there's actually been a number of years ago that he did. So it's proof that we don't have to let things like this totally crush our life or keep us from being productive. And kind of in another video, talked about people getting handed crap sandwiches in life. Well, this is one of them, and sometimes, I mean, they can totally alter our lives. But he's used this, I think, in his attitude, and has just been real chipper about it, and just kind of, rolled with the punches, as they say. But it's just one more example of some of the dangers of farm machinery and what can happen to people when, mistakes are made. And, sometimes the mistakes are of our own making. And I think even he would say that in his case, with what happened, it was operator error. And he just wasn't careful enough, watchful enough as he was handling that auger. Anyway, it's 1 a.m. now, guys. I think I said I wasn't going to harvest this field. Well, I did anyhow. I think I'll let it go here for now. Looks like we took several driving trips through Gelvin Valley, all from some problems with some fences. And I probably need to stick on my combine up here to pay attention. But I think I'm going to call it here and let it go. So thanks for coming along, and have a nice night.